Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we've got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, let's talk about how America remembers Bloody Sunday this past weekend. President Biden traveled down to Selma to commemorate what happened on Bloody Sunday on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. We'll bring you the latest and talk about his push for voting rights in the John Lewis Voting Act. So we'll talk about that. A new non-law enforcement 911. This is what's being proposed in the city of Los Angeles, as the police union is asking for the city to create a space for non-violent calls, but that doesn't require police, but will require nonprofit organizations and other social services for those calls. So is this a way to curb police violence? We'll have that conversation. And then later, we got a brand new segment, Reclaim Your Health, with Dr. Bridget Williams, MD. We'll talk to the doctor about what's happening with hair products and cancerous toxins that are affecting Black women. We'll have that and a whole lot more, so stay with us. That's all happening on today's edition of The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, let's jump right into the discussion as we first kick off the conversation talking about America remembering Bloody Sunday. And folks, we are going to be joined by my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols from the University of Maryland. He's a lecturer from the African American department there at UMD. But let's talk about this as the president has gone down to Selma to once again make a push and a call for voting rights. Here's the latest of that situation. Take a look at here. Standing on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the president, where voting rights demonstrators were brutally beaten in 1965 by state troopers while protesting for equal access to the ballot. President Biden doubled down on his call for Congress to pass two key federal voting rights bills that remain dormant on Capitol Hill, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. Now, the president said the right to vote and to have your vote counted is the threshold of democracy and liberty. He said, with it, anything's possible. Without that right, nothing is possible. He added, this fundamental right remains under assault. I want to bring in my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols, to give us some insight into this situation. As we know, this is one of the key pieces of the president's overall agenda, getting voting rights. He already had gone to, in celebration of Dr. King, he went down to Dr. King's home church down in Atlanta and made that point this year that he's trying. That it's a slow process. I remember us talking about this. He said it's a slow process. I'm trying to get things done, but we don't know. We don't know. But now he's back at it and saying, look, we need to get this done. What do you make of this as part of that celebration on Bloody Sunday, Doc?
Well, I think he was paying attention and his handlers, everyone at the White House was paying attention to what happened at CPAC on Saturday. Where former President Trump made it clear that he was going to attack voting access and voting rights. And he realizes that this is an issue that African Americans care deeply about. And of course, it's very much tied to what occurred on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. So I think all of those things coming together made it, a no-brainer for him to go out and say, this is something that we're fighting for, that we are still fighting for this community. We are still fighting for civil rights and ballot access. And I think he's certainly recognizes that he's going to not only need voting rights to be, on the table in order for African Americans to maintain some amount of trust in him, but he also is going to need African Americans to come out and vote if he wants to win again, regardless of who his opponent is. I would say even more so if his opponent is not Donald Trump. So I'm really, I think they were comments that made sense. Of course, you got the John Lewis Voting Rights Act bill, which restores the Voting Rights Act that he literally was beaten for on that very bridge. And you got the Freedom to Vote Act. And I think the president wanted everyone to know that it was still on his agenda and use a public forum in front of African-American people in order to let everyone know that he's still thinking about this.
Well, I'm glad that he's making the push again. And I think we've all been wondering this: how far will this situation go in terms of his ability to get these two pieces of legislation approved in both houses of Congress? How far, considering Republicans are now in power in the House and now Democrats are in the Senate, how far should we expect this to go? Will he use his bully pulpit?
I mean, he's going to use his bully pulpit, but when you're at 45% approval, your bully pulpit is only so strong. Basically, that means you're preaching to the choir, and even the choir is looking around and looking down. So I don't think that's going to necessarily move anything in Congress. It's not going to get Republicans to move over to the other side. Republicans just censured one of their members for breaking with the party. So they are really trying to stay in lockstep because of what happened with Speaker McCarthy and that embarrassing display. They want to look like they're unified moving forward. So I don't think that this is going to happen. But again, what you want from African Americans is to know, regardless of the odds, that you didn't give up the fight. Because
right.
The African American spirit, that's the Black spirit. We fight against all odds, and we want a leader and a president who's going to continue to fight regardless, continue to speak about this issue, continue to try to rally people behind it, even if the odds are down. Now, and I really don't think it's going to happen. It's not going to happen in the next 2 years. What's going to hopefully happen is that people are going to use whatever ballot access they have, go out and vote in large numbers, and we can flip Congress back to the Democrats, and they will pass these voting rights bills. But again, they've got a really tough challenge ahead of them, not only in the White House, but some of those Senate seats. I think Democrats are defending 11 Senate seats, I think.
Yeah.
And Republicans are only defending 6. So the balance of Congress could flip dramatically. And if you have, it could be a point where we have a completely Republican Congress and a Democratic president where he can get very little done. So this is really important moving forward for the president and for Black folks to have access to the ballot.
Very, very important. Folks, I want you to join us in this conversation. We've been talking to Dr. Jason Nichols, lecturer from the African Americans Studies Department at the University of Maryland, talking about President Biden's remarks in regards to Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Voting Advancement Act, talking about the Voting Rights Act, and moving and really trying to push the needle forward on this. We would love to get your take on this. Let me just go to, and I want to make sure I'm going to my crew here, because this part of this conversation, Doc, is it's like a redundant conversation, right? Like, now the president's been in office for some time. For me, it just goes beyond just saying that we want to get this thing done. It goes beyond that. And I think for a lot of people, it is the same way. It's like, okay, Mr. President, we understand, we hear you. But what's your pathway to get it? Are you going to can he use executive power to get this thing done?
I don't think so. That'll get challenged in court and struck down immediately. Again, elections have consequences. So not only will it get struck down in local courts around the country, more district courts or whatever, federal courts, but if it makes it to the Supreme Court, it has absolutely no shot. Presidents cannot use executive power to pass legislation. Like they can't. Like that's not how, an executive order works. There are ways where you can kind of finagle it and get close.
Yeah.
And particular if you know that you have Congress behind you anyway, like Congress won't bat a lash at it. But generally, legislating is for the legislature. You know what I mean? That's their co-equal branch of government. And one of the things that we don't want is for a president to just be able to use his pen to make laws. That's not how we work. The Congress makes laws. The president signs off on it. He can reject a law through the veto, but he can't make them. So it's going to be, I don't think he can do that. I don't think he can pass a bill, through executive action. So as much as I would like for that to happen, and there may be ways around it, it's the same thing with trying to protect, women's, ability to terminate a pregnancy and many other things, where people are like, come on, President Biden, do something. There's very little he can do. And this is why voting rights are so important. This is why they want to suppress the vote. This is why a few weeks ago we talked about how people in Wisconsin were so excited. Those Republicans were so excited that 37,000 fewer Black folks voted. And again, as I always tell people, and I know I've said it a million times on this show, in Georgia, all they're looking for is 11,780 votes. And that changes everything.
Right, right.
So they're not looking for like 1 million votes or whatever. They just have to suppress 11,780 votes in, Atlanta, which is what, 60% Black or 50% Black?
Right.
So suppress that, 1 million Black, eligible voters or 500,000 eligible voters. They only need to suppress 11,780. And that's
a small neighborhood, bro. That's a small neighborhood.
Right. Oh yeah. 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 That's all it
is. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we'll continue our conversation about the president, his remarks about voting, and of course, get your comments as well. A lot of you are checking in on the crew. Make sure y'all post your comments on our YouTube stream, on our Facebook stream, and continue to tune in to us on Amazon News. Stay with us, folks. We got a lot to talk about here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds. As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now
We have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Hey, Black, I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds. An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol. We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking to Dr. Jason Nichols, who serves as the lecturer for the African American Studies Department at the University of Maryland, talking about America remembering Bloody Sunday and some of the recent remarks President Biden had made in regards to getting two pieces of voting rights legislation passed in both the House and the Senate. All right, Doc, looking at this whole situation, you're basically saying that the executive power can't be used. The only thing that the president can essentially do is to advocate, is to continue to push, but it still falls into the hands of both Democrats and Republicans in the Congress. Is that what I'm hearing, Doc?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, he can try, but again, I think it's going to get struck down in the courts. And like I said, even if it makes it to the Supreme Court, which I don't think it would, but even if it makes it to the Supreme Court, we know what's going to happen there. I mean, they're hostile to this administration anyway. But I also think that they actually have a strong legal leg to stand on, because you cannot legislate. That's for the legislature to do. That's for Congress. What can happen is that you can get Democratic congressional members keep trying to bring this to the floor, keep trying to bring a vote. I think it won't go very far, but I think that, that's the only thing you can do is to continue to advocate for it and try to flip some of the more moderate members of Congress.
Well, I mean, that's the big part, right? Like trying to convince member of Congress. And for us on this side, and I know that a lot of my crew members might be thinking this, for us on this side, Doc, we that means that we would need to become more active citizens at this point, right? Like we need to call our legislators, call our state folks, call our representatives to get active, because at this point, I don't have any confidence that this is going to move on the Republican side. I'm sorry, I just don't feel it. I don't think it's going to happen, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a hard fight. And one of the things that Republicans have made it clear, and like I said, Donald Trump made it clear that he wants to further contract voting rights. I mean, we all know the Voting Rights Act was, at least Section 4B and Section 5, all the pre-clearance, everything that basically protected Black voting rights, particularly in the South, got taken out with Shelby County versus Holder in 2013. Part of what the John Lewis Voting Rights Act does is that it brings those, back pre-clearance. And if you're familiar, your audience, I'm sure, are familiar with pre-clearance, but just that if you have a history of discriminating against voters, then you, in order to change anything within your voting laws, you need to get pre-clearance from the Department of Justice. And that was, struck down by Shelby County versus Holder. Shelby County being in Alabama, pretty much where the Voting Rights Act basically started, So it's really important. We heard what Donald Trump said. He said he wants, that he's their retribution, that they want to take away mail-in ballots, which have been around for a very long time. They want to make it so that only their people vote and so that only their side wins. And I hope that, Black folks are very vigilant in, being aware of this and making it known and making it a big issue. Don't let it fall by the wayside.
Right. Absolutely. Let's go to our culture crew to hear what folks are saying. Let me go to my man, Real Brooklyn. Real Brooklyn checked in and said, nothing is to get tired. Real Brooklyn, first and foremost, I appreciate you. You said nothing to get tired over. People before us fought worse battles than what we are doing. We have made it, and we haven't made, and yet we are pissing it away. Do you think that's the case, Doc?
I never want to. I hear what he's saying. I just don't want us. I want us to definitely stay motivated, stay energized around these issues. But I kind of, as much as I respect the brother, I kind of disagree, because we saw, for example, in Georgia, it was Black folks and Black organizations getting out the vote that put Raphael Warnock in that Senate seat and basically shifted the balance of the Senate. Black folks have shown a lot of energy around voting, particularly over the last 3 years.
Right.
So I think we need to give ourselves some credit, but realize we can't sit on our hands or sit on our laurels, that we have to keep organizing, that this is a perpetual fight because they will not get tired of taking your vote away. So we need to continue, show young people the importance of voting. And that's why I think, publicizing what happened on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, it was, it is incredibly important. Young people need to know about that. They need to know where their voting rights were won and the blood that was spilled to get it.
Absolutely.
I think that's incredibly important to keep them voting.
Agree. Jan Wig, you checked in and said, look, I don't know how you're living, but I know I want better. I want more. I want everyone who looks like me to have more. So no, we can do better.
Yeah. I want better for my family, for your family, East Coast, West Coast. I want all people, not even just Black people. I want all people to raise their standard of living, to have, health care, to have all of the things that a wealthy, civilized society should be able to provide all its citizens and even non-citizens. But again, democracy was fought for, and so we have to continue to fight for it. I agree with Real Brooklyn. We got to continue to stay motivated and energized and ready to fight. There's never going to be a point where we can, or any generation where we can just say, oh, that battle's over. We won that. We couldn't do it with housing. We got fair housing in 1968. We still have to stay vigilant in order to get more Black people in homes, in order to get Black people to get fair prices for their homes, in order to avoid, the modern versions of redlining that have developed. We have to stay vigilant. It's the same thing with, voting rights in 1965, civil rights in 1964. We have to stay vigilant. Those things seem like they're from a past generation, but as soon as we think, okay, we can leave those behind, they find new ways and they adjust to take our rights away from us. So, the fight continues and will always continue, and we need to get younger generations to recognize that fight is still going on.
Well, and I think also to connect younger generations to the struggle, right? Because there's a part of our culture, Doc, where we don't want our children to struggle the way we struggle, right? So is like the extreme opposite of going through that struggle, we keep them completely away from struggle to the point where they don't know, to the point where they're not aware that their grandparents or their mother or their grandparents or their had to fight for basic things that they're being taught in school. Because my son is being taught in schools about voting, and it's important to vote. They're not having, and I'm saying in the state of California, even in the state of Maryland, that they're not having those conversations like, oh, voting is being challenged today. You know what I'm saying? When you're talking about a second, third, fourth grade, fifth grade level, they're not having those type of intricate conversations. They're not talking about, oh, there's this guy named Ron DeSantis down in Florida that's trying to keep young people like, I mean, none of that is happening in these schools, right?
Right.
So it's like, at this point, it really does fall on us to determine like how we're going to move forward, considering all of these different obstacles and dynamics of the conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I've been thinking about that, in terms of how can we educate children to current events and to, rights that are in jeopardy. And I interviewed a guy by the name of Kash Patel, right? And if that name sounds familiar to you, it should. because he's wrapped up in all of these Trump lawsuits. Like he was one of Trump's guys. And, he's an Indian American guy. And, he's in the documents thing. He's in everything. And he became a big hero because he was, you being out there in California, you are probably familiar with Kash Patel because he was an aide to Devin Nunes.
Yep.
Now, the reason I bring up Kash is because what Kash did was write a children's book where Donald Trump was like this righteous king. And there were all these evil people trying to take the king down. And he's trying to get the book into school libraries. All those school libraries that say they don't want anything political in there.
Yeah.
Literally trying to get his book into school libraries.
Wow. Hey, Doc, let me do this. Let's take a quick pause. When we come forward, I want us to continue to have that conversation about Kash Patel and a little bit more. Plus, I got some other stuff we got to talk to Dr. Jason Nichols about. Stay with us, folks. The conversation continues right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds. As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Folks, welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the show. We've been talking to Dr. Jason Nichols about voting rights and so much more. Stay, and Doc, I want to get right back to you. Talk to us about Kash Patel.
Yeah, so I mean, my primary point about Kash Patel is that he wrote this children's book because he wanted to get young people to believe in what it is he believes in. So perhaps we need to start writing children's books, at all levels, and putting together children's content that will teach them about voting rights, and not only about what happened in 1965 and about Selma, but also about what's going on today, what's going on in your local area. So we need to actually use whatever platforms we can, because I can tell you that's what the right is doing. That's what, it's funny because I was talking, I'm probably saying a little too much, but I was, talking to, Brother Keenan, who works on the show, about, a scripted show that I developed that I was trying to talk to, the head honcho here at BSN about. And the whole thing is that the right, when you see what they're doing, they're trying to, like the Daily Wire, what they're trying to do is create content that's not just political content. They're trying to put it in popular culture content that has their worldview. So I think that's one of the things that we have to do with children in particular, is for them to get our values through the content that they consume. And I think that's one way to address this.
So if that's the case, if we're trying to get children, if we need to get the message across, that why hasn't that been done so far though, Doc? I mean, that's pretty simple, but why hasn't it been taken advantage of? Why haven't we implemented that?
I think partially because I think that number one, I think society in general doesn't respect what it is that children, who children are. Like they are, as trite as it sounds, they are the future, so in order, to solidify the kind of values that you want, and this is what Ron DeSantis is trying to do. He's trying to say, no, I don't want not only my children to learn certain things or to receive certain values, I don't want your children to get it either. I want your children to be blind to it, and he's basically succeeding right now. And not only is he going after education and school libraries and banning books, another thing he's doing is going after popular culture content. He's going after Disney. He's like, oh, no. Disney, you want to show a same-sex couple, even though there's literally no sexual content or context to it. It's just two moms. Unacceptable. I'm going to punish you for that. And doing everything that conservatives say they don't want to do, which is government overreach, and basically punishing any content that tries to do that. I think that there are ways that we can fight back with that. I think we need to get that content into some of the institutions within our communities, like in Black communities. Why can't we write those books and sell them at churches? You know what I mean? Sell them at the mosque.
Yeah.
Get it to our children so that they understand our values and our struggle, so that they're prepared to fight the battle that comes up when they're of age.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And I hope that somebody's listening. You know what I mean? That somebody's thinking about these kinds of things. I've been trying to do it. Obviously I don't have the reach, but maybe somebody who does have the reach will get into that.
Absolutely. It's like I said, I think it's a fantastic idea. I think it's something that we should be talking about much more, is to try to, and we can go back to what Frederick Douglass often talk about is that you have greater success of teaching babies than you do adults. And to get that message in that way is huge, absolutely huge. Every great social leader, Black, white, Asian, whatever, every great social leader understood that if you want to create a real revolution that is going to be lasting, start with the children. We know, either creating a school system or creating a curriculum or creating some philosophy that can be spoon-fed to the children that will bring about the change that you see. Now, this is going to be interesting. Like I said, we've been talking about the voting rights. It will be interesting to see how President Biden, Vice President Harris, and others will kind of move forward on this. Let me get your take on this other piece, Jock, which is what I'm seeing right now in 911. There is a possibility of getting a new 911 in the city of Los Angeles. Here's the take on the situation, folks, and I want y'all to chime in very quickly. In the city of Los Angeles, the LAPD union has suggested or is proposing that instead of getting those certain calls coming routed through 911, where a police officer might get on the scene thinking there's danger, but there might be that officer may be required to take care of the scene outside of what they're taught and trained to do. Mental health cases, other cases, right, of social disturbance. That the union is saying, look, how about we route those calls to nonprofit organizations and other agencies, and then you bring the police in when there is violence on the scene or when there is something criminal happening. And I thought this was an interesting take. Now, this is coming from the LAPD. So I don't know if y'all know, LAPD has had a huge problem of police brutality and police misuse and police-involved shootings of civilians. But to come from the LAPD union, I'm thinking, is this something that we can expect to see around the country, Doc, on pretty much reimagining what 911 does? That you might get a social worker, you might get a psychiatrist coming out with a police officer.
Yeah, I think people have been calling for this all over the country, and I'm glad that finally police officers, because it hasn't been marketed to them correctly. I'm gonna be honest with you. I know some people, might flame me up. The culture crew might flame me up here, but I think one of the problems that I had with defund the police was that it sounded punitive, and that's not the purpose. The purpose was to make the community safer, to get resources to people in areas, in ways that they need it. And in many ways, it would deburden the police, because the police, as that police union representative said, we're not social workers. We don't deal with that kind of stuff. You call us when you need actual police work done. And I think that makes perfect sense. That's the best of all worlds for everybody. You don't have to train some 23-year-old police officer how to be a social worker with, where he's got like 60 hours of college. That's not what his job is. So in this situation, to me, I hope that this actually goes through in LA. They've tried things like this. They piloted a program in New York City, and it worked very well, actually. But again, powers that be start talking tough on crime, blah, blah, blah. And then, these kinds of things start going away. But in reality, this actually makes the police job better, easier, more pointed. People think everything, my trash can falls down, I need to call the cops. No, there should be other ways, where you can get the services that you need at that time, and not always depend on a police officer to deal with something that he or she is not trained to do. So to me, it makes perfect sense. Kudos. I hate to say it feels weird saying
I know what you're about to say, bro.
Kudos to the police union. I never thought I'd say that. But, real talk, this is what people have been talking about.
Look, hey, Brother Jason, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I gotta go with the LAPD on this one. Like, I'll make sure if it's true. And I think this because, again, the leadership of the LAPD has changed. He hasn't changed. Actually, Mayor Karen Bass actually has extended his contract for Police Chief Michael Moore. And so he's behind it. But what I think that makes this such a pivotal piece of legislation for city council to consider the union. And so by coming directly from the union, which is oftentimes always in the corner of police, regardless to the circumstances, it makes a lot of sense. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let me get your take very quickly, folks. about this idea of rerouting certain calls where police officers might be the last to show up on the scene versus the first. What's your take on that? Stay with us. That conversation continues up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about how the LAPD police union has proposed an idea of redefining what 911 does and how the police respond. They are proposing that certain calls that require mental health professionals and other social professionals to come on scene first before the police gets on scene or while the police is on scene. Now, this is a huge piece of legislation that the City Hall here in Los Angeles will have to consider. But one of the big things is that this is a growing trend in the country where so many cities are saying, okay, we need to figure out how do we kind of curb the violence of police-involved shootings, for example, or police brutality. And so I want to get your take. Do you think this is a good idea for certain 911 calls to go to nonprofit organizations and other agencies and have the police to kind of serve as a backup to those individuals or along with those individuals? Or, you know, should we kind of look at an alternative form of an alternative 911 way? Let me go back to my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols. Doc, you talked about this. You're saying that this is a good thing. Let me share with you what the crew is saying, because this is really important. Sharon checked in. Sharon, you said, my question is, who are vetting these organizations? Are we not freeing focus from responsibility of being trained to deal with all aspects of society? They do have bigger budgets. I think the vetting part is important. I think that you put that into the hands of the city to some degree, right, Doc? I mean, you know, because they know they have a better understanding of what each organization does, especially specific agencies that are part of the city government structure. But to that point of who, you know, are we kind of freeing focus from responsibilities? Let me just say, I think, Sharon, you're making a great point. I would just say we should free focus. I want to give police, I think police should do what they do. But it's apparent to me, Doc, that police can't walk and chew gum at the same time in some cases. Yeah. They don't know when to turn on the officer friendly, the mental health officer, the resource officer in the schools. They're coming to each situation as officer bust your head, or they come into each situation looking to arrest somebody versus trying to turn it on and off. And I at this point, I'm like, look, if this will help to curb some of the police violence, I'm all for it. Bring somebody else into the conversation. Bring somebody else. Maybe that will check some of these officers before they just continue to run amok. Am I wrong in thinking? What you think about what Sharon is saying?
I hear what she's saying, but no, I agree with you. I think that you should take responsibility. Like, I don't need my dentist to do my heart, do heart surgery. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, my dentist should be working on my teeth. So, if you follow what I'm saying, is everybody has their role in society and in the government and with their, what they're supposed to do. And police officers, maybe they're not supposed to be dealing with someone who's in a mental health crisis, who maybe is nonviolent or does not have a weapon. That should be the role of somebody who knows what to do in a mental health crisis. And you can't have police, be the fallback for everything. Or then guess what? You're living in a police state. You know what I mean?
Right.
We want to avoid. We don't want law enforcement to be the only thing you call, the only resource you have. We should have other resources for people that are experiencing other types of situations and emergencies. There are things that police are just not trained to deal with, and those should be dealt with by professionals. If I need, a certain kind of professional, I want that professional to show up, not just somebody who it's like, okay, we just call we call him for everything.
Right.
That's a bad way to approach it.
Hey, look, I'm gonna get to Real Brooklyn, but Conscious Thought said, no matter what, law enforcement will always act in an overseer capacity when engaging non-Caucasian people. They have and are being trained to suppress non-Caucasian Black upward mobility. So
I'm not going to disagree with that.
I'm going to say, like, I can't disagree with that.
Yeah.
But here's what I'm thinking. Like, maybe this will be a way to change it. Like, I'm sorry, folks, and I know some of us was like, Real Brooklyn, my guy, you said, look, hell no, the police needs to be held to the standards we expect. The only problem with cops is that they are not being held accountable. Stop doing it. It is useless. Stop doing it, LA. I guess he said LA, it is useless. Look, I don't think it's useless. I think that there should be something here. Look, we're in a very important time as we kind of wrap up here, but we're in a very important time that communication, community engagement, how government works needs to change. I think that's the big outlier from all of these things we often talk about, Dr. Jason. It's the fact that this government is so rigid, and it's like we're going to stay the course of not considering all of the nuances of people, consciousness, awareness. We're not going to evolve to a different understanding of things, especially when different ideas, like the government is stagnant from the national level all the way down to the city level. It's stagnant. And how it governs is very, very stagnant. It's very, very slow. New ideas come up once every 10 years, it seems like. We put money in old ideas until the money runs dry until the idea doesn't work. I mean, you got all of these type of issues. So I'm up for, if this don't work for a year or two, then we try something new. That's the type of, like, that's when I'm at this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Versus, oh, it never will work. Don't put no money behind it. Let's keep it the way it is. I'm up for nuances. Let's put a little money here. Let's see if it works. If, like I said, give it a year. See if it changes. Right. You say, what city was that, Doc, that you talked about that has done this already or is doing this already?
New York. New York did it. I think they stopped, but they had a small pilot in Manhattan, in Upper Manhattan, where they were like having mental health professionals respond to people who were having a crisis. And a lot of times they were able to convince people to come with them and get treatment. It was really, at least last time I checked, it was really working well. I know it was still being attacked by people who just want cops to show up with guns to everything. But there are times when, again, somebody is trained to do something and somebody is not.
Right.
So let's have somebody who's trained to deal with certain situations rather than, someone who's not necessarily in the best position to deal with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Jason Nichols, always a pleasure to connect with you on Mondays, brother.
Yes,
You're a
sir.
brilliant man. You do some great work and keeping us informed. So I appreciate your time with us here on The Culture this afternoon.
Thank you, my brother. Hope to see you next Monday.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we got a brand new segment, Reclaiming Your Health, with Dr. Bridget Williams, MD. We want her to talk to us a little bit about what's going on in the world of health and wellness. We'll talk to her. Also, we're going to have my brother Michael in Hotep. He's going to check in as we talk about some things as well. So stay with us. A lot to coming up in the next hour of The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds. As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We are introducing a brand new segment about your health and wellness, and it's time for us.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a balanced life. with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is this.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We are going to be introducing a brand new segment this week today where we're talking about how you can reclaim your health. Now it's time for us to reclaim your health with Dr. Bridget Williams, MD. Dr. Bridget, thank you so much to reclaim your wellness. There
Absolutely. We're excited to be here, right? No, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Reclaim your wellness. I'm thinking about health and wellness.
Yes.
You're saying we're going to do it all. Reclaim your wellness.
Yes.
This is a brand new segment we're going to be checking in with you at least once a week to talk to us about some of those big health, to have those big health conversations. And I'm very, very excited and very grateful that you're going to be bringing your expertise here to the culture here on the Black Star Network. We already been talking to you about a host of other things from family care, child care to cannabis. But now you're going to have this segment, which is going to speak directly to some of the big health questions that we have. So, Doc, I appreciate you. And what is this latest piece that I'm seeing? There are a couple of things, but one is this piece that I'm seeing around Black women's hair care products and possibly including having some cancerous toxins.
Absolutely. So I've been seeing this everywhere. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this and to present Reclaim Your Wellness with Dr. Bridget, MD. Just for new people, I'm a family physician, cannabis specialist, life coach, and I've been hanging around with Farajii a little bit off and on here for a while. So I'm excited to bring a regular segment to you and talk about traditional medicine, holistic medicine, cannabis, discussion topics, and whatever you might want me to bring to you. So today, well, first of all, it's Women's History Month. And so with that in mind, I've been seeing this everywhere where there are more and more ads, streams, what have you, on this hair relaxers and cancer. So I don't know if you've been seeing this on your Facebook feed or people have been talking about it, but I had a lot of curiosity. I didn't have a lot of background on what was going on or where we were as far as this lawsuit. But what's been going on is women who use chemical hair straighteners and relaxers may have a higher risk of uterine cancer, according to a new study from researchers at the National Institute of Health. And so what we're talking about is a study that was published October 2022. So this is new information, sort of. And what they did was they took 33,000 women between the ages of 35 and 74. They followed them over an 11-year time period, and it was called the Sister Study. And so the study was done by the National Institute of Environmental Health and Sciences. And what they found is that women who were using hair straightener products were twice as likely to have developed uterine cancer than those who did not. And so who are we talking about? We're talking about Black women for the majority of the people that obviously were in this study. Now, the reason why this is a lawsuit, because this could just be new information, but the reason is a lawsuit because scientists really knew that the chemicals that were in these products could have been causing cancer for some time. And you did not have a choice when you're buying that box or when your hairstylist is applying this chemical. You didn't have the information that this could be cancerous. And that's where the lawsuit comes. And so we're talking about all the major organizations and companies. We're talking about Dark and Lovely, Just For Me, which is mainly, for little girls, L'Oreal, Oceans, Optimums, all the major ones that you're familiar with are a part of this lawsuit. So it's a big deal. Okay.
Let me ask you this, Doc. First, these are companies, and I remember back in the day, like when I used to see Just For Me and some of these other hair products, with Black children, Black women on the front, there was this assumption that these were Black companies.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the case?
Not necessarily. I think some are, and many of them are not. And the fact of the matter is that the knowledge base that really everyone had in this is still very unclear. But what they're finding is that if you have been using this, the likelihood of you developing uterine cancer specifically increases. And so what they found is that if you are using a relaxer more than 4 times a year, you were more than twice as likely to get uterine cancer as opposed to people that were using a little bit less. So let me put it into context. That women who were not using hair straighteners at all, about 1.6% of women were getting uterine cancer by the age of 70. But those that were frequent users, so these are people that were using it more than 4 times a year, were 4% more likely to get uterine cancer. Okay. So they might sound like small numbers, but we basically jumped from like 1.5% to 4% because of one chemical or one product that you're using. And so and the way this happens, because a lot of people say, well, my hair's out here, right? What's that got to do with my uterus down here? But the fact of the matter is that when you're applying these chemicals, they're absorbing through the scalp. And if you've ever had a relaxer, you know that while it's absorbing through the scalp, you can get scabs, you can get sores, you can get wounds, which increases the likelihood even more. And the fact of the matter is a lot of these chemicals are that can be activating to your hormones as well, which is why it's affecting your uterus. So this is really important information that we need to consider and really take a closer look at.
This is wow. I'm blown away right now, Dr. Richard. I am blown away. It makes total sense, but it's just the fact that I know, like for my sisters, my older sister, I mean, I remember seeing her, little girl kind of going through that process that a lot of Black girls go through, right? Getting that into it. They call it creamy crack, that lie that Black girl and women use. And I see there's a huge movement of sisters who are pushing back on the use of these products already. But to go this far to see that medically it has affected women's health, the uterus, and so many other parts of them, even affecting their ability to give birth, is mind-blowing just from hair care products. So this is a Class A. I'm assuming this is a Class A multi-million-dollar lawsuit.
Right. So as far as what people would receive in the course of this, so the reason you would apply is because of whether yourself or a family member has developed uterine cancer or at some point and have been using these chemicals on a regular basis, right? And so then, and I'm not going to give you any particular number to call because this is everywhere. There are lawsuits and lawyers that have putting out ads everywhere for this. So honestly, look this up, choose the one that seems most appropriate for you and where you're located. But if you have developed uterine cancer, then you definitely want to take this into consideration. Now, the problem is that there's no test for uterine cancer, right? Because you might be sitting there saying, well, I don't know if I've ever had, I don't know what's going on, right?
Right.
There's no test for uterine cancer. So let me start. If you're postmenopausal, that means you have not had a period for over 12 months.
Right.
And then you start to have some spotting and bleeding, go and see your doctor.
Right.
If you are still having periods, and you're having heavier periods, you're having breakthrough bleeding different times of the month that you shouldn't be having bleeding, go and see your doctor. Because the assumption is always, oh, these are my hormones. This is what's going on with me. Who knows what you think you're going to? I'm stressed. You don't know if there could be something more serious going on. And the fact is, as Black women, and Black women in particular, but there are, they included Latina women, what have you, that are in this study as well. If you're having these issues, do not just assume that you know what's going on. Make sure that there isn't something more serious happening.
All right, let me go to a couple of our crew members who are checking in on this, Doc, to have this, as you're kind of sharing this information. This is absolutely important. And I'm so happy that, we got a specialist like you to kind of break it down for us. Walter Hudson, you checked in and said, look, these big corporations knew that their products were dangerous, and the big corporates decided to deliberately cover it up. These big corporates need to be held criminally accountable and economically accountable.
Yes.
And I think that's the whole purpose of this lawsuit.
Absolutely.
To hit both of those things, right?
Because basically the scientists and the researchers started to notice that there was this increase in the number of uterine cancer cases that were happening in the country. And so researchers, as researchers do, said, wait, why is this happening? What's changing, right? And they found that over a long period of time, this is what they were discovering. And so keep in mind that what we don't know is, men be getting some relaxers. Look, I don't know what the results might be, but I'm sure there's more research to be said about how this might affect men. How does it affect pregnancy? There's still more research that needs to be done. However, for as long as I can remember, we've always been taught, and I tell my patients as well, that while you're pregnant, you want to avoid hair dyes. You want to avoid getting relaxers during that period of time. And to have more research on this and actually do a study and have, a group of women pregnant and have them exposed to this and another group, we can't do that. It's not ethical to do that type of study. But I'm sure that there's more research coming down the line as well about this. So
Absolutely. Let me go back to the crew. Tiana said, I learned the hard way. I burnt a patch of my hair out with a relaxer. Never again. Mm-hmm. There's also that part of it, right, Doc? The fact that, women use these products, particularly Black women, use these products with the hope and expectation that it's going to grow their hair, cultivate their hair, take their style up to the next level, and it ends up damaging their hair. And not only does it damage the hair, it damages the self-esteem, the sense of self-confidence that a lot of women, were expecting to have. Can you speak to that I don't know if you're a medical doctor, but there's a psychology part of that as well.
Right.
That talks about that.
Absolutely. So, the fact of the matter is when we're, as Black women and the pressures that we're experience in society to look a certain way, what is the standard of beauty? Things have progressed greatly over time, right? That we have taken back our own beauty, that we are reclaiming our own hair, that we are doing more natural styles and doing more styles that are not damaging to our natural hair. And I highly encourage that. And so if you are someone that's currently using relaxers, we recommend if you can decrease them to 2 to 3 times a year. Now, depending on your grade of hair, that might be a little bit more difficult to do, but you can do more protective hairstyles. They're braids and crochets and wigs, and there's all sorts of ways that we can enjoy our beauty without damaging our hair, because it is damaging to your self-esteem. Because for a lot of people, getting a relaxer may straighten it, but it can be incredibly damaging at the same time. And that is damaging to our self-esteem. So I think we need to take back our beauty at this point and find ways to approach this without that. Keep in mind that there's the Crown Act that was in California that prohibited discrimination based on hairstyle and hair texture, which is it's insane that in this day and age, that is something that as Black women, we have to be concerned about, that we might be discriminated against if we are not wearing our hair the way that white culture is wanting us to. And so I say, do what feels good for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the big parts of this is the fact that this goes so much deeper. Pardon the pun. It goes so much deeper than just the outward beauty. Mm-hmm. We often quote the fact that Black women in particular spend millions upon millions of dollars per year on hair care products. I remember seeing TikTok videos recently of celebrities, women who have put all this money into creating these large dressers full of beauty products, from hair to makeup and everything. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, the fashion and the beauty industry is reaping billions of dollars off of Black women trying to figure out what is the standard of beauty, what works for them. And so when we hear stories like this, is this a sign that Black women need to kind of go, quote unquote, holistic, quote unquote, all natural? Is this a sign that Black women need to stay away from certain products altogether? Or is this just one of those things where you see corporations trying to get over?
In reading all the research and different studies and news reports that have been out there, the first response is don't panic.
Okay.
That we're talking about a significant number, but a small number overall. But at the same time, this is about reclaiming your wellness. And so, yes, this is something that might be a small percentage in the great skew of things. But what I'm really asking people to do is let this be the marker or the red flag that really says, is this something I even want to do? Because there are risks that are involved in it. Now that I know that, is this something that makes me feel good about me? Right. And at the end of the day, reclaiming your wellness is reclaiming your beauty, is reclaiming your hair, is reclaiming your confidence. And so I'm not telling people to panic, but I'm asking them to rethink the options that are in front of them.
And really quickly, what are the best places or the resources that you can offer to help us in that reimagining, rethinking process? Are there any products that you would personally recommend as a doctor that kind of meet your criteria of being safe and effective?
Well, I would say at the end of the day that the more natural, the better, right? Okay. And I think what makes us unique as a Black culture, as Black women, is we can do amazing things by using natural oils, using that to nourish and treat and take care of our hair and our scalp. Yeah. And we can make magic happen with some cornrows and some amazing braiding, right?
Come on, Doc.
Come on, Doc. I would say let's get back to what we used to do. I will tell you, talking about the Crown Act, I remember the last time I used to wear braids all the time. And I remember the last time that I wore them was near the end of medical school. And here I am seeing patients and the problems that I had and I won't get into all the drama of being a resident and being a Black woman, but the response and the issues that developed, that was really the last time that I wore them. And so it's maybe even a message to myself that it might be time to get back to that, because we decide, we take care of ourselves and we decide what our own beauty is.
That is right there. I'm loving this. I can't wait to have more conversations with you, Doc. I really can't wait.
Absolutely.
I am feeling this. All right, folks, this is Dr. Bridget Williams, MD. Doc, how can people reach out to you to get more information, or to have, if they have any other questions after seeing this piece?
Absolutely. So I would love to get interaction from you. Help me decide what we're going to talk about each week. You can reach out to me, submit a topic or question at info@drbridgetmd.com. I'd love to hear from you and I'll be responding. And this is Colon Cancer Awareness Month, so I definitely want to talk about that. Next time, we're 20% more likely to get colon cancer, and we're 40% more likely to die from colon cancer. So let's definitely talk about that next time, and send me a message on info@drbridgetmd.com.
And Dr. Bridget, I have to bring this conversation up before we take our next break, but I would love to get your take on this new study that shows that even though in America, Black women are still at the at the top of the list for infant mortality. I've been reading a couple of studies from the CDC and other places saying that regardless of what the social status of that Black woman is, that she still may suffer from a high level of infant mortality. And I'm like, where's this coming from? So we got so much to talk about with this segment, Reclaiming Your Wellness. So I'm very, very grateful for your expertise to be a part of the conversation. But Dr. Bridget Williams, folks, MD, make sure y'all tune in each and every week for her conversation about health and wellness. And the segment is called Reclaim Your Wellness with Dr. Bridget Williams, MD. There it is right there. Dr. Williams, thank you so much for joining us once again. We look forward to reconnecting with you, God willing, next week.
Absolutely. Thank you, Farajii.
You're welcome. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we got my brother Michael in Hotep, and we're going to have a conversation about reparations. Stay with us. It's the culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All the momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. For our final conversation is something that we have been talking about here on the show for some time, and this is the issue of reparations. Well, there has been another development in the case of reparations, particularly here in the state of California, as Californians are now awaiting a big report to come out of the California Reparations Task Force, where they will provide some recommendations on how the state of California can move forward in possibly creating some program or some space within the state government where reparations can be distributed. Let me share with you a little bit about where we are with this. Take a look at this. This is coming from the GRIO, but it says that a vote is possibly slated for this weekend on requirements for who would be eligible for payments and other remedies was delayed because of the absence of one of the committee's 9 members. But the group may vote Saturday on whether lawmakers should create an agency to implement an eventual reparations program. Now, lawmakers passed legislation in 2020 creating the task force to assess how this legacy of slavery harmed African Americans long after its abolition through education, criminal justice, and other disparities. The legislation directs the task force to study reparations proposal with a special consideration for the descendants of enslaved Black people living in California, and is not meant to create a program in lieu of one from the federal government. Let me bring in my brother. One more. The first of its kinds is the country, but some used the group's latest 2-day meeting in Sacramento to warn that not enough Black Californians are sufficiently informed about its work. All right, let me bring my brother in, Brother Michael Imhotep, who is a researcher, scholar. He's host of the African History Network podcast show, and you can see it on YouTube and in other social media. And we're happy to have him on Mondays as well. Brother Michael, how are you, sir? Good afternoon.
Hey, Farajii, I'm doing all right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. We can hear you. We can hear you. All right. So you've been staying on top of this reparations piece, and particularly what's been happening here in the state of California. But the latest about the fact that there's this big report that's supposed to come out from the task force, the reparations task force, trying to move the ball forward. What do you expect that this report will say, or how this thing is going to move forward, Brother Michael?
Well, there's the deadline is July 1st, and they're going to release a report that deals with how they're going to deals with what the recommendations are for reparations and how it will be distributed, who it will go to, things of this nature. Now, back in 2022, they took a vote dealing with how to determine the criteria for who would get reparations, and that dealt with doing it based upon lineage. So you would have to trace your you have to be able to trace your ancestry here in this country back to an African-American person who was here in the U.S. prior to 1900. Okay, either an enslaved person or it could also a free person, but they had to be here prior to 1900, from my understanding. So some people some African-Americans did not like this, and they said that this is not going to be inclusive of all of the African-Americans in California. So African-Americans make about 2.5, 2.6 million of them in California. Now, the reason why they had to do it based upon lineage, as opposed to just saying this is all for, say it again?
No, I was just going to say, versus just saying you're Black.
Yeah. Well, the reason why they had to do it based upon lineage as opposed to based upon race is because in the state of California, race-based policies are illegal. And they want to make sure that when this gets challenged in court, and it definitely will be challenged in court, they want to make sure that it will not be overturned in court because it's deemed illegal and violates California state law. So I've been reading different articles, and you have different people and activists, things like this, upset that it won't go to all African Americans in California. And it seems like a lot of us really don't understand law. And if you have Republicans filing lawsuits to block student loan debt forgiveness, and it's going to help millions of white people, you think they're not going to file lawsuits to block this reparations in California? And African Americans are only like 5.5% of the California population. We're not the majority of the California population. So there was an article that came out also from the Washington Post, and it dealt with San Francisco debates reparations, $5 million for each, $5 million each for Black residents. That ain't gonna happen. That's not gonna happen at all. I mean, not in your wildest dreams will something like that happen. And Dr. Darity,
you had to shoot it down like that.
$5 million. No, that's not gonna happen. That's like the study. There was a study that came out a couple of years ago. Yeah, this one right here. There was a study that came out a couple of years ago, and it said African Americans were owed $6 quadrillion for slavery. $6 quadrillion did not exist in the entire world when the study came out. So the first thing, if that's more money than exists in the entire world, what good is the study? We have to understand it doesn't matter how much you think you're owed. The only thing that matters is how much you can actually collect. All this stuff, floating around out here. $6 quadrillion at the time, maybe about 2020, there was an astrophysicist who did a study and found that $5 quadrillion existed in the world. A quadrillion is 1 followed by 18 zeros. If 6 quadrillion don't exist in the entire world, what good is your study? Then the other thing is try to enforce it. Try to enforce it. If you can't get a bill passed to study reparations, explain to me how you get one passed to pay reparations. See, we're not thinking about this logically.
You might as well just put our children up and just be like, hey, I'm gonna get $1 bazillion.
I was speaking at a Juneteenth event in Inkster, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit, man. And I was speaking at a church, and this sister brought this study. And I read about the study, and I laughed when I read about it. This is just nonsense, okay? And I'm like, come on. But, unfortunately, sometimes we throw out these crazy numbers. Right. And at the same time, we have to look at how do you get this enforced. But if your argument is, okay, our ancestors worked for free for 246 years, therefore they're owed this money because they work for free. The first premise question that I would ask is, what law are you citing that slaves were supposed to be paid in the first place? If your argument is that that the descendants are should be paid because our ancestors work for free, how do you can't enforce it? So we have to understand operating within law. That's why what California is doing is excellent, and people should start reading the 500-page study that they released, which is the most comprehensive study dealing with inequities and discrimination and racism against African Americans since the Kerner Commission report came out in 1968. Okay, but so we need to understand that. But also, and I know we're coming up on a break, the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866 is one of our best chances to get some type of restitution, because many of our ancestors were getting benefits from those treaties, but they got kicked out of those treaties around 1941. See, I'm for what will ever work, but to understand what will work, we need to understand a history of what has worked. In the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties, there's a documented history of that working.
Look, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, crew, I want to get your take on this part of the discussion, where in the state of California, the California Reparations Task Force is expected to release a comprehensive report about what the state can do to move the needle closer for Californians to get reparations. As you can hear, Brother Michael and Hotep just breaking it down, how this decision or this report can create an implication for the whole country, set a precedent for the whole country. I want to get your take on this, folks. Join us in the conversation. Post your comments in the chat as we're streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and of course on Black Star Network and Amazon News. And stay with us. We're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, more conversation about reparations, California, and you. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds. As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about reparations and how Californians are awaiting a big report to come from the Reparations Task Force, which would give some ideas as to how the state of California can pay reparations or give reparations for Black people whose lineage shows that they are connected, that they were involved in the enslavement of Black people in this country. It is a big, big conversation that just recently, even though this discussion has been around for 30 over these past couple of years, especially with the justice, the efforts around police brutality and other social justice issues. Now reparation is coming back into the conversation in a very, very big and mainstream way. Brother Michael and Hotep is having this conversation. Let me go to some of the crew, and the crew has been checking in on this, Brother Michael. Some folks are again, some folks are saying, like, you know, we should see what California does, and other folks are saying, look, let's not even have any hope. Why? Before we get into the crew, I do want to ask you, why should folks really believe that reparations may happen in their lifetime? Is this a very real possibility, Brother Michael? And from all the research and all of the work that you've done around this issue, does it seem possible?
Well, let's go back in history and look at the Black Freedmen and Indian Treaties of 1866, because the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians owned African slaves, and the Africans that they owned, they were forced to set them free by the federal government. Those Africans were given land, they were given membership into the Native American nations, and they were given all the rights and privileges of being a member of those Native American nations. So they actually got restitution. This is how you have a Sarah Rector, who was of Creek Indian African enslaved ancestry, Sarah Rector in Oklahoma, and she became the richest Afro-American girl in the country in the early 1900s at about 12 or 13 years old, because oil was discovered on her land. So there's a history of this. We just don't understand that history. Now, when it comes to getting reparations today, one of the first things I would do is take the term reparations off of it, because automatically it has a negative term to some people. And you have to keep in mind, the majority of the people in the state legislatures or in Congress, U.S. Congress, who are going to vote for this are white. All right. So when we deal with restitution at a federal level, one of the things we have to look at is not so much just focused on getting a check. We need comprehensive reparations. So the laws and policies that were put in place that have negatively impacted African Americans for decades, you have to reverse those laws and policies. At the same time, you have to show how it's beneficial to America in general to correct the wrongs. This is why when we look at the study that we talked about last week, when we talked about Japanese Americans who were united to help African Americans get reparations, and the study, the article from CBS news.com that talked about how the U.S. economy had lost $16 trillion over the last 20 years because of racism. All right.
Yeah.
And it goes through and breaks down how that negatively impacted African Americans, but also it talks about how it, and I just posted the link there, it talks about how this is hurting America in general. Okay. And it says that if these inequities were fixed, the U.S. economy could grow by $5 trillion over the next 5 years. If those loopholes were closed, those policies were changed. So it's showing how racism negatively impacts everybody, even though we get the brunt of it. So when we understand how to properly position that and focus on comprehensive reparations, we have a much better chance of getting that into place. But also you have to understand how to get bills passed in Congress. It takes 218 votes in the U.S. House of Representatives to get any bill passed, and it takes 60 votes in the Senate because of the filibuster. Okay, so once we understand how to score touchdowns, and don't confuse a touchdown with a first down, then we can start scoring some points. We're playing a real life game of political football and don't know the difference between the first down and the touchdown, and wonder why we don't have points on the board.
Chris Bake, you checked in and said, there it is, that piece. Racism has cost the U.S. $16 trillion, according to Citigroup. $16 trillion.
This was over 20 years, not 246 years, not 400 years.
Yeah.
From 2000 to 2019.
Right. So over a 20-year period, you're talking about $16 trillion. Gotcha. Chris Bake, you checked in and said lineage is the only legal way to disperse reparations under the U.S. Constitution.
Well, what it is because if you're looking at federal law, Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, Section 601, non-discrimination and federally assisted programs, makes illegal race-based policies. Right. So California, what California does could serve as a model for what the federal government does and what other states do also. Okay, doing it by lineage. But treaties, Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution tell you that the U.S. Constitution, all the previous treaties and all the subsequent treaties are the supreme law of the land. And the Black Freedmen Indian treaties of 1866 are still on the books and still being enforced for those 5 civilized tribes and Native Americans. And we need to focus on getting that enforced again for us. This is some of the work that Attorney Demario Solomon Simmons is working on, who's on sometimes on Rollo Martin Unfiltered.
Right. And it's an ongoing situation. I mean, and this is going to have to, if in order for this situation to catch steam right now, Brother Michael, you really do need to have a majority or a number of people involved. It can't just be Black people.
Right.
I think there's got to be some white people. I think there's got to be some people from various industries, from law to politics that see this. And most importantly, you got to have Black scholars around the table to figure out, okay, if this is going to happen, let's say to start off with with the state of California, one of the largest states in the country. If this happens in California, what does this look like moving forward in other states? We know that Evanston, Illinois, they already have put together a reparations model in the outside of Chicago, the city of Chicago. Other places are looking at it. New York City is even
Detroit is a Detroit reparations task force.
Right.
Now, very quickly, in Evanston, Illinois, it's important for people to understand this because the person who spearheaded that was Robin Ruth Simmons, who at the time was a city council member. I interviewed her for an hour on the African History Network show. A lot of people were critical of what they did because this dealt with housing vouchers. This dealt with assistance in buying homes and $25,000 or whatever the number was. And what people have to understand about Evanston, Illinois is Evanston does not have a history of slavery. Slavery was abolished in the state of Illinois in 1818. Evanston was not founded until the 1840s. Evanston, Illinois is a city of about 60,000 people. Percentage of African Americans is 16%. They don't have a history of slavery, but they had a rampant history of housing discrimination and redlining. So the city council was addressing the harm that the city inflicted, not what the state of Illinois inflicted or what the U.S. government inflicted. So when we look at repairing the damage at the city level, you can't expect the city to address what the federal government did. They don't have those type of resources to do that. They will address what the city did.
Right. And I'm glad that you made that clarity and made that point. And we're going to have to kind of to be weighted in as well, to see how California Reparations Task Force responds. We got 1 minute left, Brother Michael. What's the latest work that you're doing, brother?
Visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. Each Saturday in the month of March, because March is Women's History Month, we're going to have a free lecture, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. So we'll get that information at our website, but also 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, Ancient Kemet, the Moors and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, 12-week online history course I teach. And then Sundays, Black Resistance Movements, Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968, 12-week online course as well. Visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, to register for these courses. And then PG-13, you can use this with your children also. And we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded, so you can go back and watch it anytime.
There it is, my brother Michael and Hotep checking in as always here on The Culture on Mondays, and you can check him out on Fridays on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Brother Michael, thank you for being on the show, and
thanks for having me, Farajii.
For The Culture, bro.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank each and every one of you for being a part of the conversation. Thank my team, King Keenan, Joel, my control room, for making it sound so good. Thank you. And I thank Dr. Bridget Williams. Our new segment of Reclaim Your Wellness with Dr. Bridget Williams. You can check her out every week here on The Culture. And my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols from the University of Maryland. All right, folks, stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong, stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. Make sure you download and you support Black Star Network at blackstarnetwork.com. Follow us on social media. Follow me on social media at The Real Farajii on IG, Farajii on Twitter, and we would love to connect with you. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Peace.